Afternoon. I want to welcome you to another session of the Gospel Roundtable here in Conyers, Georgia, with Shelem Flemons Medical Missionary, and we're here discussing prevention and its cure. You know, because when you look at sicknesses and various things that people are being confronted with on a day-by-day basis, and we're seeing sicknesses rise. We're talking off camera, and we were talking about how the CDC said that, you know, this year they're expecting, you know, the worst cases, or this is going to be the worst season for flus. Wow. And already not, as they project, they're not at their peak, and they're already seeing record numbers of cases of people getting flus and things of that nature. And so we're coming today to discuss prevention. That's right. Because the saying is an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. And so we want to discuss how can we prevent some of these things that have become so common when they really don't have to be common. So we're going to talk about how we can deal with that, and so Brother Shelem is going to actually lead us into that of how we can overcome some of these things.
Well, you know, you mentioned about the flu. It's very interesting that all disease could be categorized in one or two ways, and all disease fits under two umbrellas. It's toxins that build up in the body, and that really leads to the second cause. It's imbalances. You know, you mentioned about the flu bug, and when we eat a diet that is full of refined sugars, it just weakens the immune system. When we eat a diet that's high in animal proteins, animal fats, it's so hard to digest. It adds bacteria to the body. They're also, you know, putting a lot of things that are in the meats today that really help to bring about the flu, because, you know, you're burdening your system with all these acid forming foods. That's what it really is. And when you have a lot of toxins in your body, those toxins are usually, they come with an acidic environment. When we say acidic, you know, there's a pH scale where it goes from 0 to 14, and you have on one end of the scale it's alkaline, and the other end is acid. Whenever a person has a disease, flu included, the body is more acidic. And just to mention meat as one example, animal flesh breaks down to purines, the protein breaks down to purines, and the purines break down to uric acid. And so you tend to just naturally, as a matter of fact, you cannot have a healthy pH if you consistently eat meat. So if more people would eat more vegetarian food, fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables, the rate of flu symptoms or flu deaths or flu occurrences would greatly diminish.
You know, and you mentioned flesh food, and that's one of the things we're actually going to deal with, not in this, but deal with the myths of meat eating. Yes. And actually just deal with that solely, because that's something that most people have misconceptions about meat. And you were mentioning the pH, and one thing that those who are watching, those who are here, one thing that some of the things you talk about, some of the basic scales, these basic principles, are what your doctor will use if they went to the doctor. You know, the doctor is going to look at the pH scale. The doctor is going to look at the blood, and is going to look at the fluid levels. And one thing the doctor is going to do, last if not least, is going to ask you, what have you ate? What have you been doing? That's right. When do these symptoms come? And so really they're basing their prescription, or what they're going to do, off the information you give them. That's right. So if we can have that understanding about our bodies and what we were doing and what we were doing before we got sick, what we ate, then that should tell us something. Then we can, with a little more information, then we can know what to do to get better. Right. Because the doctor is simply basing everything he's about to do to you off of what you told him.
That's right. And, you know, we use this phrase, connect the dots. I am amazed that there's a lot of wonderful information. You know, when you think of in the Bible, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, there's some wonderful things in modern medicine. But what I have found is that medical school does not teach the medical doctor to connect all the dots. Here's an example. I visited people who just came out of a quadruple bypass surgery, and the first thing that they're given to eat is ice cream full of fat, when it was fat from animal sources that caused the heart attack in the first place. With a lot of diseases, the doctors will tell you that it doesn't really matter what you eat. You don't have to make any major changes in your diet. And so when I say they're not connecting the dots, they've learned how to treat a symptom once it manifest itself. But as far as preventing it, choosing the right foods, getting the right exercise, drinking the right amount of water, they really didn't learn those things in medical school. And that's the sad part. So you have a combination of good and evil, if I can use the word evil to suggest that it's a combination of something that's not best combined with something that's good. So we tend to look to the doctor for everything when we need to go back and realize that they have some flaws in the educational process. A doctor will tell you they probably took a few hours out of the many years of medical school. They probably took a few hours of nutrition.
Okay. So what we want to do in dealing with prevention, off camera, we talked about head to toe. There are some things that we can do in prevention from head to toe that we can deal with. And most people, something that is just, I guess, common to most people is headaches.
Right.
It's something that is looked at. Everyone is going to get a headache.
Yes.
But the thing that I found personally, when my diet changed, when people start talking about headaches, you have to think for a moment. You say, wow, I don't remember the last time I had a headache.
Right.
And so there are things that people get on just a common everyday that they experience, which should not be so common.
Right.
If they could just understand a few things from head to toe about their own bodies,
right,
they could eliminate a lot of the drugstore visits,
right,
a lot of the doctor visits, and not to say that you wouldn't go and get a checkup and things of that nature, but just some of the more reoccurring things that people just tend to live with.
The best reason to go to the doctor is, hey, I just want to get a checkup. It's nice to go to the doctor and I'm not here because I'm sick. That was a wonderful thing. You mentioned about the headaches, and this is not the cause of, as we're talking about prevention, this is not the cause of every headache, but the majority of our headaches are the result of too much of a substance called histamine that is actually floating around in our bloodstream. So we ask the question, well, how does histamine come into your bloodstream? Well, whenever your body has an overabundance of protein, particularly protein that the body can't easily digest, the body mounts a response, and the antibodies come and the body senses protein as a excess protein, undigested protein. It senses it as a toxin. If you were bitten by a poisonous snake, that poisonous snake would inject that venom in you, and when they've tested the components of that venom, it's just protein, and it's undigested protein. Why is it undigested? Because it bit you in it didn't squirt it in your mouth, it bit you on the leg. So it's undigested directly in your bloodstream, and what that does is the body mounts a response, and it creates histamine. That histamine is what's called a vasodilator. That means it dilates the blood vessels. It makes them get bigger and bigger. That's why the snake bite will cause your leg to swell and things of that nature. Well, when that histamine goes up to your sinuses and it dilates, you end up getting all kind of sinus problems. When it gets into the eyes, it dilates and you get redness of eyes. And when it gets into the head or in that cavity, the blood vessels expand. They press against the nerves, and we feel the pain as a headache. Most of the headaches that we experience are just that. So if people would watch their diet, in other words, if we didn't eat too fast, eat too much, drink with our meals, which hinders the digestion, eat in between meals, which weakens the digestion. When digestion is not good and well and the right foods are not being digested, we end up with more undigested protein in our system. Your histamine levels will rise, and you will visit the doctor with a headache.
While you were talking, I think about in the Bible where it says, because a sentence against an evil work
That's right.
is not executed speedily,
That's
men
right.
are fully set in their hearts to do wickedly.
That's right.
And because someone says, well, I eat this way and I don't feel the symptoms.
Right.
So they continue to eat that way. But again, our sins will find us out.
That's right.
They're going to catch up with us. So
That's
you
right.
may not be experiencing any of these symptoms now, but later on in life, they will come back and they will hit you.
That's right. The Bible gives us a way of life, and that is something that most Christians don't realize. We think that the Bible is this book that tells us how to live one day a week, and it's really not just that. It's 7 days a week. So the foods that we eat, the clothes that we wear, the lifestyle that we live, God wanted us to be healthy. And there's a scripture in the Bible. It's in Proverbs 26:2, and I'm going to just give a portion of it. It says, "The curse causeless shall not come." And we use that as an analogy. If we want to substitute the word disease for cause, we would say the disease without a cause cannot come. Anybody who is sick, there is a cause of that disease. Yet, if you look in the medical literature, there are thousands of diseases, and they are listed as idiopathic, meaning that the doctors don't know the cause. Why? Because we're not looking at how is this person eating? What is this person drinking? And we're unwilling to look at those things and help people make positive lifestyle changes. We just want to treat a symptom after it's done, and that's not prevention.
So dealing with, we talked a little bit about headaches and dealing with that from head to toe. Now, just in some of the experiences that, because you deal with people and who come and they may not feel, they may not have the desire to go to hospitals, and
Right.
they may say, you know what, I want to experience this healing a natural way. I don't want the side effects from this various medication, from that various medication, and I just want to go about it in the natural way. And most times, people are discouraged from going in those directions, either from family members or from medical advice. But my daughter had gotten sick, and I was speaking with someone, and they said, well, because the child is nursing and the baby, she's not eating solid food, she's nursing, we don't really know. So the best thing to do is to take her to the doctor, let the doctor at least examine her, and then and if there are some things we can do, then we'll do that. And so we called the nurse, and the nurse, it was interesting because the nurse said, what is the child doing? We said, well, she has a fever. And the nurse said, one thing, if they're not doing XYZ, don't panic. If she has a fever, the fever is your friend.
That's right.
And I was, and while the nurse was saying this, again, it just reassured, and some of the things that I've been learning from the Bible, from yourself and from others, that when people get fevers, the first thing they want to do is reduce the fever, get rid of it, and then have a false sense of, I'm better because the fever is gone. When in actuality, what does a fever do?
Well, it's interesting. The fever, if the body senses that there is a toxin, it could be a bacteria, a virus, a fungus, or something that has invaded, God has made the body with its own defense system. And the immune system will increase its output of soldiers to fight whenever the body is heated. So it naturally develops a fever. As a matter of fact, if it gets serious enough, the body will make you feel cold, because the way it works, and this can get a little technical, but your body has what's called a set point. And let's say our set point is 98.6. Well, if there was some invaders, your body will say, okay, I need Pastor Tinsley to sweat this thing out for a good while. So it will change your set point maybe to 100, 101. So until you get up to 101, you're going to feel cold. That's why people actually shiver, and yet they're really sick, or they have a fever. So the body is heating itself up. the immune system soldiers are multiplying at a faster rate to kill the bacteria, the virus, the fungus. If you just treat that fever with a medication, then you're actually allowing that virus or bacteria to still stay in your body and proliferate. And so the disease isn't really curing you. It's actually going to allow disease to come back in another way. So unless the fever is just extremely, like, dangerously high, we like to let nature take its course, and we assist the body. So one of the best things to do, and this is going to sound a little strange to people, but if the fever is not at a dangerous level, sometimes we actually heat the body just a little bit, just giving it a little help doing what it's already doing, and then the fever will break. They'll start sweating, and before you know it, they're better. Because you're helping the body do what it's trying to do. It's using its own energy to both try to kill the bacteria and heat it up. So if you help heat it up, then it can say, okay, you got the heat, I'll just focus on the bacteria, and you'll get better faster.
You know, because I was pondering the when people give vaccines, and the vaccine the whole idea of the vaccine is really to stimulate the body to do what it will do naturally. Because you give the vaccine, now you'll get sick, the body will build up its own immune to that disease so that when it comes, the body will fight it. And as I was thinking, I said, wow, isn't it interesting? What if we just worked on the body as it is without injecting it with something, but just naturally build the body up to fight off these infections without injecting it? And so the interesting, when you talk about connecting the dots about the doctors who give the flu vaccine is counting on your body to do what it will naturally do.
That's right.
You know, and the thing is, well, connect the dots. Let's not inject the body with this, but let's just naturally build the body up.
That's right.
As a defense to fight against the foreign invader.
When you look at what made vaccines popular, what made modern, not even modern medicine, but made medicine at that time think that this was a very, very important part of medicine, most of the epidemics, you know, that killed large numbers of people, when you really study the facts, soldiers, in one particular, I forgot which one it was, but a lot of soldiers were together and they ended up getting a particular type of disease, and it killed a lot of people. But the sanitation that they had to, the lack of sanitation that they had to endure, a lot of those plagues from way back when, that they didn't know. It's more of a modern thing. For doctors, really, when I say a modern thing, it was before you and I were born, but I remember, was it John Harvey Kellogg? So that was in the early 1900s, where he brought to the surgeons the fact that they should wash their hands before surgery, and they ridiculed him, and now that's common practice, and the mortality rates during surgery have gone down. So we are learning more recently about the importance of cleanliness. So this whole scare of the need of vaccinations and all these epidemics and plagues, the sanitation levels that we have today, where we understand the importance of keeping clean, these vaccinations are not necessary, and they have toxins that are very dangerous. There have been studies to show that especially with children, some of them lead to autism and things of this nature. So it's just not necessary, and the reason that made it necessary was poor sanitation. You know, so.
Yeah, so I mean, just looking at, idea of prevention. Now, what could, in this season, we've kind of gotten past the Thanksgiving, the Christmas, the New Year's, where it's interesting that flu season always starts around the holiday season, where a lot of candies and sweets and so on and so on are going to be introduced into the body. And so that brings on the flu season, again, connecting the dots.
That's right.
So now that we're beyond that, and someone, has little children that, my child gets sick often, and speaking from a personal experience, when I was young, I mean, mother always had me in the ER because I used to get sick a lot. But going back, I could see I had very poor sanitation habits. I would come from outside and go right into the kitchen and start cooking and or messing with food. And did you wash your hands? Yes. You know, and you go to the bathroom and come out. Did you wash your hands? Yes. And you're right in the kitchen and you're eating. And so a lot of children are getting sick. Again, while these things are available, the soap, the water, and the hot water, they're not being used as often. And you'll be surprised of how many people you could go to a restaurant, you go to a grocery store, and you'll see the people who work there come into the bathroom and will walk right back out, leave the stall and go right back out. And I say, man, I'm glad I'm not going where he's working, the part where he's not working. You know, and they're putting signs in the bathroom. If you employees, it is mandatory for you to wash your hands before leaving the bathroom. Because again, sanitation is very, very, very important.
You know, you mentioned something that I just wanted to comment on. Once we get the sanitation down, where we're just washing our hands, keeping clean, flu season, if people would educate themselves off of dairy products and sugar, I would say that the incidence of flu would probably just almost go away. Dairy products have more of a causative effect to any type of respiratory problem, colds, flu, asthma, allergy type symptoms. It's just not the best food. Milk, cheese, shakes, you know, butter, all that kind of stuff. Get off of dairy products, and that's a wonderful preventive. And also sugar. They did a study where they took a bacteria called a leukocyte, a white blood cell called a leukocyte, and they measured how many bacteria that leukocyte could kill by itself. And one healthy leukocyte could kill 14 bacteria. But as they added sugar to the system, that leukocyte, as you added, I think, 6 teaspoons of sugar, then it could only kill like 10 bacteria. Then you went to 12 teaspoons of sugar. Then I think it went down to, it could only kill 5.5 bacteria. Then I think if you went to, what did I just say? I think it went all the way up to, I think, 18. And with 18 teaspoons of sugar, that one white blood cell, which is our immune system, could only kill 1 bacteria. And then it asked the question, what is the average amount of sugar that Americans eat today? And those who are watching this, just take a quick minute to guess. I'll give you 5 seconds. Okay, what was your guess? Well, the average American consumes over, I think it's about 50 teaspoons of sugar a day. So the bottom line is we just don't have an immune system.
So we do not have the mechanism to fight off these diseases.
That's right. And it's all mainly because of the foods that we're eating. We've just destroyed our immune system by the large amounts of sugar, compounded by the dairy products, which is going to be acidic, just like flesh meat. And if we would eat more fruits, nuts, grains, and vegetables, and science knows this. You go into the grocery store and you'll see these signs hanging 5 a day, talking about 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. And, you know, it's out there, but again, connect the dots. We're not connecting the dots. Well, if this is what will help me, then do I even need any of this? You don't need animal products at all. It's not necessary. When God made us in the beginning, Genesis 1:29, God gave us our diet. He said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, every fruit tree bearing fruit. To you it shall be for meat. God gave us a vegetarian diet, and I've been a vegetarian now for at least 30 years, and I've had 1 headache in that period of time, and that headache was caused from carbon monoxide exposure. It wasn't caused, and so I was not the only one in the building. Several people in the building started getting headaches, and so we started examining, and we found a little soot, you might say, around the ducts, and that further investigation revealed that one of our burners had, collapsed or something went wrong with it. So we had to get a new furnace, but that was the only cause of the headache. So, you know, we don't have to be as sick as we are. I don't think our bodies are going to be perfect until Jesus comes, but we don't have to be as sick as we are.
You know, I thought of the scripture, O Israel, thou hast destroyed thyself, but in me there's help. And so the causes of disease, or I should say our what we look at as common causes of disease, the common cause of disease is ignorance.
Okay, absolutely.
More so than what is floating around. Again, we don't live in a perfect environment. We don't have this utopia around us. So there are things that are in the air that we don't see, that we cannot. But the immune system that has been given to us by God is there for the purpose of fighting those things which we cannot see.
That's right.
So that thing that walketh by night that we can't see, the immune system is there to deal with those things and to fight these things off. And so it seems, well, it doesn't seem, the reality is we have to change and we don't want to.
That's right.
I saw a report where it says, the article said, if you think we're overweight now, wait to 2030. Wow. And it said by the year 2030, 60% of Americans are going to be obese. Last year, they said that more Americans are obese than there are overweight Americans. And so what happens is, and there was an article connected with that, and we're unhealthy, but don't take away our junk food.
Wow.
So for the most part, people have this Cain mentality, and that is, am I my brother's keeper? Hey, this is how I am. This is how I'm going to be. My grandmother lived to be 100 years old. She smoked, she drank, she partied. There's a good chance that I'm going to live to that age too, doing the same thing she did. And so some people are have just determined that this is the road they want to go on. Some are in the valley of decision where they think this is the best way because that food pyramid tells them that this is the best way. And so many people do not see how or where to make a change. A family member of mine, swole brother, and he said to me, are you still a vegetarian? I thought he was going to crack a joke. But, and I said, yeah, and I began to talk to him. He said, I've been thinking about it. But he said, there's nowhere around here for me to eat like that. And he was living in Alabama in the community he lived in. He said, there's nowhere for me to eat like that here. And he can't go to his local grocery stores and find certain products because they're not there. They don't cater to that lifestyle in certain communities. Okay. So you will have to go outside of maybe your normal habitat and find better things to eat and better quality of food. That is a necessity for some people. But there are some people who want to change. There are some people who don't like getting headaches. If you could touch on something for me, migraine headaches. Some people get migraines and I just get them every so often. Not me, but some people just get them every so often, and they just like, well, it's, they could almost set their clock by it, that they're going to get a migraine in a few weeks or maybe in a month or so.
Migraine headaches are a prime example of the type of headache that we just described. So when we were talking about the histamine, so imagine that you have protein in your stomach that goes into your small intestine. That protein, let's say you ate animal products like meat, and your body can't digest it and break it down well. Let's say you drank with that meal, so you watered down the digestive juices and diluted them. Let's say you eat all day long, so your digestive system is just weak because you keep eating between meals. It's not going to produce strong hydrochloric acid to break down those proteins. There's a lot of different pieces to this puzzle, but the common denominator is you will end up with undigested protein in your system. You have that undigested protein, your body senses it as a poison, just like a snake bite. It sends immune forces like antibodies, for example, to fight it. And as those antibodies battle or engage that protein, it has an exhaust. That exhaust from the engagement of antibodies and protein creates histamine. When it gets up into the brain, it causes the vessels to swell. They press against the nerves. You feel it as a migraine. One of the major causes, not everybody, but a lot of people know that eating chocolate is a chocolate, cheese, other things like that are very high on the list of disease-causing foods or migraine-causing foods. And it really is the undigestible proteins within those substances. So if a person would change their diet, eat more of a vegetarian diet, get off of cheese particularly, and the chocolate, will be better off.
Okay. So let's, our segments, we're actually going to deal with different things that people can do.
Absolutely.
Things that they could apply. And let me throw this out even before we eventually, we're going to deal with that in our next section. But if someone does not eat the way that you and I eat, which is an animal-free diet, if it has a mother or if it was born, we don't eat it.
That's right.
If it was planted, if it grew up out of the ground or was pulled off a tree, we pretty much eat it, depending on what that is too.
Exactly.
We got to be very careful now.
Right.
But nonetheless, so if a person does not eat this particular way, could they do some of the things that we're going to talk about? Will this benefit them even in that particular state?
Yes. It's God's way is a total package. To the degree that you engage yourself within that package, to that same degree, you'll be blessed. So if a person says, hey, I don't want to try these toxic methods, I'd rather try this natural method to get rid of my headache, then they took in less toxins. It's good for them. Will they have a permanent cure if they didn't change their diet? Probably not. But we understand health reform to be progressive. I didn't just wake up one day and say, hey, I'm just going to totally change. It was a progressive step, and we didn't change our diets overnight. Don't expect that anybody would. But you should start where you are. Take one thing at a time. I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to get more exercise. I'm going to go to bed on time. I'm going to eat less meat this week. Make some step toward progress, and you'll be blessed to the point. And you'll be surprised how fast that you can actually make a total change where you don't have to subsist on the flesh of a dead animal.
What's interesting, as we tie this section off, I think about people who have tried some of the things we're going to talk about, and they did not get the results that they thought they were going to get. And so they have somewhat been discouraged away from things and have even sown a seed of doubt into others' minds. And one thing the Lord was showing me was something about Hezekiah. And most people focus on what Isaiah did, and that was the lump of figs. But they omit the first part, and that was Hezekiah turned himself to Christ, and he wrestled with God. And then God gave the prescription of what to do. But if Isaiah would have applied anything without God's will first being indicated, those figs wouldn't have done nothing for Hezekiah. And the thing is, a lot of times we go to people for healing rather than to Christ.
That's right.
And allow God to direct us.
Amen.
And so sometimes we don't experience what we think we should experience, like the woman who had the issue of blood, because we run to people to do it, and then we spend everything we have and we're nothing better until we have enough faith to come to Christ.
That's right.
And receive the blessing in the moment what those physicians for 12 years could not supply. And the thing is, even in what we're talking about, it is man sows, one sows, one waters, but God is the one that gives the increase. And the thing is, these things that we're talking about it's not something that man put together, but this is God's method. This is what God can do for every believing soul who will believe in the things that God has done.
And you hit the nail on the head, what God can do. So we're not here promising that if you try this remedy, you will definitely get well. We don't know what God's will is in every respect, but we do know that it is not his will that the vast amount of suffering that people are experiencing today, that happened to us. So these remedies follow his plan. But as it was said by Pastor Tinsley, we need to go to God and ask him, what would he have us to do?
Amen. Because I mean, you can sit down with a headache and begin to meditate upon the promises of God, and that headache will leave.
That's right.
Before doing any of these things. But
right.
if we look to these things in and of itself, before looking to Christ, we're not going to experience the things we do. So, you know, you look at the things that Jesus did. You know, he did not heal in the same manner all the time.
That's right.
You know, some he did by his word. Others he said, you know, let me put something on your eyes. And,
That's right.
you know, it wasn't just one application, but it was two. You know, wilt thou be made whole? Lord, I don't have anyone to put me in. There's no man around here that I know can do what I think he needs to do.
And that was a natural remedy. That wasn't even a drug.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
You know, and so the thing is, our confidence, even if we should find ourselves sitting in on an operating table, what is God's will?
That's right.
God be with the physician to do what he cannot do, to do what he cannot see. So again, our life is not in someone's hands, it's in God's hands.
That's right.
Going to the hospital, it's in God's hands.
Yes.
You know, sitting at home with our feet being wrapped, going through a steam treatment, it is in God's hands.
That's right.
Everything we do, we must learn to put it in God's hands.
Amen.
Then we can have confidence in those who God will put within our midst. And a lot of times we don't have that understanding. We think that, okay, yes, he or she is going to make me better. And then we go and they don't do it. And we say, you know what, that didn't work. I'm going to go this method. Well, we have the same lack of faith with this method than we do with this one.
That's right.
You know, so that's one thing that I wanted those who are watching to understand. It is the power of God that is going to bring about these methods. So again, I just want to thank you for tuning in to the Gospel Roundtable. Again, we're going to come back and we're going to actually do our part 2, because we're actually going to start dealing with some treatments, showing how you can do some practical things with the things you have in your home, like the demonstration Brother Lackey gave us with the exercises. You know, he gave us a little corner and said, hey, if this is all the space you have, these are some of the things you can do to begin to exercise. And so we want to show some very practical things that you can do to alleviate that pressure in the head without necessarily grabbing aspirin and Tylenol and these type of things, which they tell you. And I didn't even notice. My wife showed me on the bottle, and when my son had an operation, and it says, do not exceed more than 4 times a day. It will cause liver damage. And I'm saying, wow, don't exceed more than 4 doses a day. It will damage your liver.
Wow.
And so you can do this, what we're going to show you, more than 4 times a day if you need to.
Absolutely.
And it won't damage anything.
That's right.
So
every drug is toxic. The natural remedies that we're going to show, that we will be showing, are not toxic.
Amen. So again, we want you to come back and enjoy some of these things that we're going to be sharing with you. So we'll be right back. God bless.
Oh, love that will not let me go. I rest my weary soul in thee.